At this point, any personal trainer or fitness personality who is promoting ice baths or cold plunges is absolutely, unequivocally, and 100% chance a scam artist. Hey everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And yes, I am aware that is a bold statement, but at this point, it really isn't hyperbole. It really isn't subject to debate. There is absolutely zero question about this fact scientifically anymore. And I'm going to briefly kind of cover my history of pointing out before we had all the meta-analysis and stuff of why this was a position that really only a truly ignorant person could have taken. But let's be clear, there are a lot of people who don't know a lot about training. They don't know biology. They don't know the way the body adapts, who do get into the fitness circles. And so they were simply ignorant. They were not lying. Okay. Does that make sense? They weren't conning you. They just didn't know any better. And that's okay. You know, ignorance happens, and everyone's allowed to make mistakes, and we don't know what we don't know. Perfectly reasonable. It happens. Doesn't necessarily mean that they were a bad trainer. They didn't know about lifting or nutrition. It just meant that they didn't have a good grasp on the way the body adapts or recovers, or they weren't up to speed on medical literature, scientific literature at that point. You know, and again, that happens. A lot of good trainers aren't up to speed on those things. So they maybe fell into the gimmick. Okay, they fell into the gimmick, and that happens. But as I pointed out a few years ago, if you just follow the general trends in science, it's a bad idea. And in other words, even before they really got studied heavily recently, before it got studied, just having a decent knowledge of biology, medical history, stuff like that, just an average decent working knowledge, if it's an area of interest to you, should have said, yeah, this is kind of dumb. Okay, and I pointed that out a long time ago. I'm like, I wouldn't risk it because number one, why are you going to subject yourself to hardship that looks like it's possibly counterproductive? Like, why spend money? Why spend resources? Why put yourself through hardship? Difficulty, because it is difficult to get into a cold plunge. It's uncomfortable. Okay, if it is potentially going to be harmful to your results and there's no biological reason to think it would be valuable. Okay, and that was the position we were in, say, 5 years ago. Okay, 5 years ago, that's a reasonable stance. You know, we just say, look, common sense here, guys. The whole ice thing doesn't work, right? The sports physician who popularized the whole ice protocol, rest, ice elevation for injuries and everything else, came back over a decade ago and said, yeah, hey, I was wrong. Modern scientists kind of showed it wasn't a good idea. I'm retracting that position. Right? I'm retracting my book. I'm retracting the protocol I wrote, whatever, in the 80s. Sorry, it just, you know, it was the best knowledge we had at the time, but modern biology and everything has shown it's completely useless. Okay, there's no benefit. Cold does not help with injuries, doesn't help with a lot of this recovery. Sorry about that. Okay, and that's good, honest medicine. Okay, for someone who is intellectually honest, who made money on a protocol based upon the best of his knowledge at the time to say, you know, modern science is caught up, and guess what, guys, I was wrong. You know what, that happens in the medical world all the time with different treatments. Like, oh man, better stuff comes out. Oops, we didn't get it right. Now, before people jump up and say silly stuff like cigarettes, that actually was never endorsed by science. That was propaganda by cigarette companies. So just before people jump on and say, oh, all sorts of stuff. No. That literally was never a medical position of medicine or researchers, just an FYI. So you don't go there. So a lot of that stuff people think is scientists is actually either corporate sponsored media, things like that. Corporate sponsored studies. It's not independent research. It's not the best medical doctors. It's literally business. People confuse those though, because they don't look into, hey, was this ever actually really real science? Or was it just companies' propaganda? And the smoking fell into that category. So we have all of that. Or some people say, well, pro athletes wouldn't do it if it didn't work. Yes, they absolutely would. I've done multiple videos over the past 10 plus years explaining why that is a terrible reason to think something works, because professional athletes are notorious for being taken in by scam artists on things like that. Absolutely notorious, right? They're some of the biggest victims of it. So just an FYI, if that is your evidence, then you're automatically wrong, okay? Because there's a long history of that. We've discussed why that is, how it happens. That's actually really normal. So usually saying, oh, a bunch of pro athletes endorse it, but the top experts don't, just assume it's a scam by default. Like that's actual evidence of it being a scam. Historically and statistically means it probably is. So that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And again, I've explained the fine details of how that works and why. Okay, and why the pro athletes are actually okay with it too. So we have all of this, but now we fast forward to 2024, late 2024. Meta-analysis have come out at this point saying, look, I mean, we all kind of knew this was really a scam, but we've researched it further. We spent your tax dollars and grant money and everything else finally researching it, and it's a damn scam. That is the official public position, that it does nothing for recovery from training in any beneficial capacity, and it appears to slightly hurt muscle growth. Okay? That is the official meta-analysis current scientific position. Not only was it never based on real science to begin with, we need to be clear. It was always one of those where anyone saying that this would help with these things it was probably scientifically illiterate. Like it's like, no, that's no. That it's not based on science. This is nonsense. It's probably going to do the opposite. Okay, that was always what reasonable people thought. Now you have official consensus saying it's BS, it's a scam, and it can potentially, in some cases, appear to hurt your gains. And it actually does appear hurt your gains, meaning bad timing of it. Yeah, you really time it incorrectly, it will hurt your gains. In a best case, it will do nothing. So your best case is a neutral effect, your worst case is a negative effect. That is what all the research shows. Everyone who's ever promoted this has been linked this stuff. This is what the meta-analysis is. So anyone who is still promoting it, they have been linked this. They already know it was never based on science to begin with. And instead of admitting, oops, I got it wrong, which a lot of times we have to do, I've done many times, they've doubled down knowing that the official scientific consensus says it hurts gains. So if they're still promoting it, that is the definition of a scam artist. They knowingly are promoting something that doesn't work or is harmful in the hopes of making some financial profit or outreach or something else. Well, my clients will be interested in it. Okay, that's it. That's a scam. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.